Bapong in the northwest has become a hotspot for illegal mining, with operations now encroaching into residential yards and causing extensive damage to infrastructure. Some residents grappling with unemployment and other socio-economic pressures in this mineral-rich area have resorted to selling their land to illegal miners. Earlier today, 5 suspected illegal miners were arrested in the area. To unpack the issue further, we're joined now by David van Wyk, researcher at the Benchmark Foundation, and Christopher Rutledge, director of the MACUA-WAMUA Advice Office. Good to have you both, and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. First and foremost, I mean, you've got, David, 2 sets of thoughts here. One, residents who are saying, well, look, we don't want this operation or illegal mining that's going on here because we have invested R500,000 into our homes and they are being destroyed by the activities that are going on here. You've got another part of the community saying, well, there are no jobs and this is the only way in which we can make a living. Are both these residents correct, and how do you appease both?
Well, I think that we are reaping the harvest of inequality and poverty in our country. And of course, unemployment. That area is heavily mined for platinum and also chrome by major chrome mining companies. And there have been massive retrenchments from the companies that are operating their shafts closing and so on. But besides that, I think that the other issue is that we are sitting here with something which is very interesting and very unique, because chrome is very close to the surface. You simply scratch off the topsoil and then you hit the chrome. And the guys who are operating here are people with money. They've got a lot of equipment, they've got trucks and everything. They scoop up the chrome and they take it very far. They take it to Randfontein, in fact, where there's a depot where it gets processed. Now, if you are want to get an understanding of what is going on here, you actually have to do a countrywide investigation, and not just an investigation in Bapong, because the money is flowing elsewhere. It's not flowing into this community. The chrome is flowing out of this community. People are getting small peanuts for the chrome that is being dug out there. But who is supplying the equipment? Who's supplying the trucks? And where are the trucks going to? Those are the questions that we have to talk about. We also have to talk about the lack of implementation of policy and regulation, because policy and regulation says that we have to begin to normalize small-scale, medium-scale artisanal mining in this country. And we've been talking about this for a very long time, and it's simply not happening. Now we are reaping chaos because we've not created the conditions for small and medium-scale mining to happen in an orderly fashion. Yeah. Our country is starting to resemble more and more Katanga in the Congo, where large-scale mining companies are absolutely exploiting people, and there's a serious degradation of work taking place.
Yeah. Christopher, I mean, can we do what David is suggesting? And I suppose what one of the residents also raised, he says, confiscate the machines. He says, cut the market where these are sold, because they're going somewhere, and arrest those who are the ones who actually benefit the most, who take out most of the money out of this operation.
No, indeed, Abu, that was one of the first contradictions that was very evident after the minister had been to visit the area. There was this fanfare around how they would operationalize protecting the community. And then we saw that, you know, these machines, which are tens of them stuck all around the place, which, as David indicates, suggests a multi-million rand operation and investment into this area. We've also understood that there are links to the tribal council in terms of how these operations were conducted, and the benefits of which were flowing to some people within the tribal council, also to councillors, we believe, are being paid off something like 5,000 to 8,000 rand a month. There is the situation of the police itself, where members of the community report when they went to report these things to the police, they were threatened by the police. You know, so obviously some of these are anecdotal evidence, but I guess the challenge that that this situation presents is, as David says, a much bigger concern around how the resources of the state are being spent and what are the priorities of the state when it comes to poor working class people, the environment, and indeed mining. So all of these interrelated questions need to be answered. The approach of just adding a couple of police people during the day, making some low-level arrests, certainly does not suggest that there is any commitment besides, despite the 1.5 billion rand that has been spent on Operation Valam to date, there does not seem to be any real commitment to getting to the kingpins, as it were, the people who are actually benefiting, because it is not these individuals that were arrested today who are merely scavenging for, a livelihood. It is certainly located within the tribal council. It is located within the police, and even located within the corporate mines and the DMPR as well. So there is a deep corruption that has engulfed the governance of mineral resources. We've been pointing to this for since the Stilfontein massacre.
Yeah.
We've been saying that those 93 people who were massacred there were really just a scapegoat. It was a show that they put on for South Africa to show that they are trying to deal with the problem, but in reality, all they are doing is using poor people as a scapegoat for the wealthy elites and connected people to continue to benefit from these illegal activities.
So, Christopher, if you're putting the department itself there, if you're putting the mining companies themselves there, never mind the other kingpins that are there, that means there is really no appetite within the very same people that we are looking to say, well, normalize this particular situation for them to normalize it.
Yes. Look at SAMANCO, for example. SAMANCO themselves are facing charges of base erosion and profit shifting. They are accused of shifting something like 7.5 billion rand out of the country over the last 4 years. And, when companies are allowed to get away with that kind of theft, one can almost say, because it is really theft. So when they're allowed to get away with theft, then you can understand why this type of behavior trickles down. And it's the department that ultimately are the custodians of these minerals. So where are the DMPR officials that are supposed to be inspecting these areas? This community is right on the edge of the SAMANCO mine. So why are there no DMPR officials there? And when they were notified of it, why did they not act? And why is it that only the police are here and not the Department of Mineral Resources again? Because as some of the community members have been saying, if that is a mining area, then let's zone it as a mining area, and then let's deal with the problem in that way. Because now you're also going to be left with these deep holes in the ground. So it's not just enough to arrest people. There has to be a response from the DMPR as to how are they going to rehabilitate that land and restore the community to a position in which they can continue with their lives.
Right.
So really deep-rooted issues there, Thabo.
Indeed. We did reach out, by the way, to the department to be a part of the conversation. They did refuse at this stage, but maybe they will think about it at a later stage. David, let's talk about what you've raised, the policy regulation environment and the normalization thereof. One of the issues that's being raised here is that one mine actually holds all the permits. And so even if you were to bring artisanal miners into the picture, they're not really going to benefit much. How do you change that situation in law?
Well, I think the situation in the South African context is that mining law in South Africa has been written since the time of Cecil John Rhodes by the Chamber of Mines, now the Mining Council, and it's been written for the benefit of major multinational corporations coming from outside, coming into the country and extracting minerals. We can see the current contradiction where South Africa has taken Israel to the ICJ for genocide, but at the same time we are the biggest exporter of coal to Israel, in the world. There's a big contradiction there, and that is because our government really doesn't have control of the economy, and it doesn't really have control of mining. The economy and mining in this country are dominated by foreign multinational corporations, and the government cannot prescribe to them what they must do with their minerals or what they must not do with their minerals. If we look at the issue of Samancor and the old Iscor, where we had 65,000 jobs in 1994 and it's now down to 6,500 jobs at the moment, our steel industry, our ferrochrome industry has basically been stripped into scrap metal in this country and carted off out of the country. Now the government wants to impose a 25% tariff on chrome so that we could beneficiate chrome, but largely the infrastructure to beneficiate chrome has been stripped and it has been sold as scrap metal. The major iron and steel companies are applying for a relaxation of the exportation of scrap metal. And this is why we find everywhere in our cities and everywhere, piping, fencing, anything that is metallic is being stripped. And even big companies and buildings and so on are being stripped and made unsafe by people who are stripping down this country next to nothing. And then we link that to the issue of Donald Trump, which says he's going to impose tariffs on agricultural goods and so on, but not on minerals. On manufacturing and agricultural goods, he imposes tariffs, but not on minerals, meaning that he wants to support the deindustrialization of our country. And we are just falling in line with that, and we are just allowing that to happen. We really need to get ordinary South Africans to begin to play a part in our economy, more meaningful than just being cheap labor for multinational corporations.
Christopher, the calls being made already for a relocation. I mean, you've mentioned it. You're saying if Bapong really is identified as a mining area, should the residents then therefore intensify those calls?
Yes, I think the residents really speak to the central issue here around inequality and how, as David correctly says, the current mining regime benefits only large corporations and their connected elites. So what the community is saying is they are living on this wealth, yet they are not benefiting from the wealth. They're not seeing the benefit. So it's very difficult for us to say that a community that is living in poverty must continue to live in poverty and eat the dust and the soil, while others are really becoming millionaires and billionaires and flighting all of this money out of the country. And as David says, part of the problem is that the Minerals Council and mining companies really have the government by the short and the curlies, as it were. Because if you look at a jurisdiction like Canada has a much stricter mining regime. So they demand more of the corporates that are mining there than South Africa does by at least 3 to 4-fold. In terms of both taxes and benefits to the community and to the country as a whole. But their foreign direct investment has increased. So it is incorrect to say that more regulation or proper regulation will lead to capital flight. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We have opened up our mining sector. Anybody can come in whenever they wish to come in. And they can leave whenever they want to leave, with how much money they want to leave. And yet, we're not seeing the investments in the communities that need to be happening. So we're saying that artisanal mining, if handled correctly, say, for example, in Bapong, if that were declared a mining zone, an artisanal mining zone, and the state were to come in with engineers and geologists and the supporting structures that is needed for a proper and regulated mining operation, then that community there can benefit enormously, and the environment can be protected, and we can ensure that South Africans generally start to participate in the economy. We estimate that close to 1 million jobs can be created in this way. So it begs the question: if our central problem in South Africa is unemployment, why are we not opening up avenues of employment where people can participate in the economy in a regulated and constructive fashion, instead of this constant exclusion from the economy and then people resorting to crime in order to eat? And that obviously cannot be a sustainable way forward.
Finally, David, I mean, are the police opening themselves up to more legal challenges, I mean, with this latest operation that we are seeing there?
Well, yes, I think that I'm worried that a mining and economic problem has become a policing problem in this country. And it's not a problem that can be solved by the police. You know, it's a problem that must be solved by sorting out the mess that is in the Department of Mineral Resources and making sure that that department actually functions properly. The problem with that department is that it thinks that its only job is to promote mining, not to regulate mining. And so the people of Bapong have long complained about what is going on. Those holes were not dug within a day. Those big holes that you see in the community were dug over many, many months. They had an operation in Sekhukhune as well. And as we speak, people are now moving through to Bakgatla, near Sun City. You know, so the police are operating here. The guys have moved their equipment to somewhere else and they are busy digging there. They know there's high unemployment, there's poverty, and that people are desperate to get money, especially during this Christmas period and so on. And so while the police are tied up in this particular community, it is now popping up in another community. It is not a policing problem. It is a regulatory problem, and we need a department that actually legislates properly, that regulates properly, and that actually has employees that work. The community in Bapong reported this thing to DMR for many, many months, and no one responded to them. They reported it to the provincial government. The provincial government didn't respond because it's a national competency, which is a real problem in our constitution and in our law, because the provinces have no say over what happens. Mining can happen in the middle of the city. I can take you to a hole just like that right next to a primary school in the middle of Johannesburg, which had a license to operate. You know, so the department must stop seeing itself as a promoter of mining and see itself instead as a regulator of mining, as a referee, so to speak, between communities and mining companies, between workers and mining companies and so on, and not always just say, okay, no, it's okay, you can come and dig, you can come and take the minerals and so on.
Yeah.
We are involved in a global race for what is left, and we need to begin to properly regulate how much minerals we take out, what the minerals are used for, and so on. Because chrome and many other minerals are used in the manufacture of weapons. Next thing, we see a regime change exercise in South Africa using the very same minerals in weapons that we sold to those people who manufacture the weapons themselves. You know, what is the use of extracting minerals in Southern Africa and shooting it out in Palestine or shooting it out in Ukraine or wherever, wasting these minerals that are getting very scarce now? Minerals are not renewable, then mining is not sustainable. We need to control mining better.
David van Wyk, researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation, and Christopher Rutledge, director of the MACUA-WAMUA Advice Office. We appreciate your time.